Thank you, Stephen, and thank you all for taking time to join this session on chatbots using Azure AI. So, a little introduction about myself, as Stephen stole my show, anyways. So, my name is Liji Thomas. I'm a technical manager with Velorum Reply, and that's where you can find me online to stay connected and even interact after this session, because I'm sure we will. This is a quick half an hour session. I need to keep a quick tab on time. I don't take the next speaker's session, and let's get started. So here are the key takeaways for the day. We will be discussing the what, the why, and the how of conversational AI, which means that we will be talking about the background of AI, about conversational AI. You know, we all come from different backgrounds, and we probably be new to the space of AI itself. So we're happy to take a step back and introduce you to the entire space before we deep dive into what conversational AI is and Microsoft's offering in this space, specifically around Azure Bot Service and Azure Cognitive Services. If we have time, we'll wrap it up with some Q&A. All right, so let's get started. Here's the story thus far. You know, for the last couple of decades, especially in our industry, in the IT industry, we have been seeing about the PC era, the internet era, the mobile era, and now we're talking about the AI era or the artificial intelligence era. Now, in that itself, you see a lot of terms that are being interchangeably used, probably even very synonymously, like AI and machine learning and deep learning, but they're not exactly the same. For example, machine learning is a subset of AI and deep learning is a subset of machine learning itself. The nuances of which we will not go into details today, but I'd like to invite your attention to the timeline below. If you can note, AI has, at least the earliest forms of AI, looks like has been around since the 1950s and the 1960s. So apparently the most common question I get asked in my circles is, why is all the hype around AI these days, right? Why is just in the last couple of 4 to 5 years or so, people are talking about AI and conversational AI, if this has been around for quite a while? Good question. In fact, to answer that, let's ask ourselves another question. How is AI programming different? So there are many ways in which you can answer that question. I put it very simply and say AI programming is about teaching machines. If you come from a conventional programming paradigm, you know, in structured programming paradigm, we typically instruct machines. We give it instructions, we create rule sets, and we feed in those instructions to machines. AI is a different game altogether. We teach machines, and you can imagine that as just teaching another human being. I mean, if I had to teach my children, I would need a couple of things at my disposal. First, I would need data. So this kind of data, and we need like a good amount of data to be able to train and to teach machines, which apparently was not available during those times in the 1950s and 60s. And then we need advanced computing power, which again was not available during those times. And most of all, we needed advanced statistical models. So you can imagine that in those times, decades ago, because of the absence or non-availability of these required parameters, AI could not take off, and then we entered a phase, as what researchers would put it, AI winter. And we went into that about 1 or 2 times, and then now we are in the summers of AI, and you probably must have got the hint by now. So there has been breakthroughs in these spaces which has been enabling AI, particularly around big data, cloud computing, and powerful algorithms. And these together has helped us into coming into this age, and which is why we see a lot of interest and renewed interest in the space of artificial intelligence. Now, why we're saying this story is because the evolution of chatbots as we know today is not very different. It follows almost the same trajectory. It's been around since, the PCs of the 1980s was when we used to use desktop applications. And then in the 1990s, we came the internet era, and then almost everyone was using websites to get their job done. And the 2000s, the smartphone era, you know, as the computing power got increased, the people's patience got decreased, and they wanted quick answers, and they wanted quick returns. And even the device sizes got smaller. So they were very welcoming of the smartphones. And now we have an entirely new interface in the form of AI chatbots. Let's take one more step back and ask ourselves, what exactly is a chatbot? Because you tend to hear a lot of these interchangeable names. You hear conversational agents, virtual agents, conversational assistants, personal assistants, chatbots, glossy names. A chatbot, simply put, is a computer program. It simulates human conversation. It does exactly what any other computer program can do. The only difference is the interface is in the form of text, voice, or maybe both. So that software, this piece of software called chatbot, it can either stand on its own, like you have Alexa or Siri, or it can be even hosted on your website. Like if you go to Amazon.com, you get to see a small chatbot on the site. So you can put that chatbot on your website as well. Now, what all can a bot do, or what's exactly in a bot, depends on your business case. So depending on your problem statement, you can create a bot to either book a dentist appointment or to reserve a hotel location, or you want to tell the weather, or you want a bot to wake you up in the morning. Totally possible. So it can be very simple bot to a very sophisticated bot. Why chatbots? Why not a website? Why not a web application? Why a chatbot? First of all, we already discussed, it feels less like using a computer. You can deal with chatbots the way you would deal with another human, right? So for years, we kept telling humans that you need to learn the language of the machine if you need to interact with the machine. You go to a website, you need to know how to navigate around the website, learn the navigation menus, understand what pages there are, find your way around the website. And we say the same for the web application, and we'll need the same for a smartphone application as well. You need to learn the language of the website, and this will be different across 100 different websites and 100 different applications. They will have their own languages and ways in which they communicate with you. A chatbot changes that entire paradigm. You can interact with a chatbot the way you interact with any other fellow human being. Historically, conversation has been the most native and intuitive way of communication that human beings have ever known. So this changes the entire game for us, and this is why chatbots are so popular. Besides, it's available 24/7. It never takes PTO, and it doesn't take a sick day off as well. So it's great for your business. It gives immediate responses. It's very accurate, very quick to respond. It has very reduced cost as well. The initial investment on creating a chatbot could be huge, but then the return of investment is great. You can reach new channels. If you have a lot of customers on Facebook or on Twitter, you don't have to create a new office and set up a new operations staff model there. You can just deploy a chatbot to reach out to your new geographies or to your new channels, and overall increases the customer engagement as well. So looking at the history of chatbots, you'll see that this has again been there since the 1960s, 70s. So if you're thinking Alexa and Siri is the first chatbot, that's probably not the case. And also, looking into the future, this is quite optimistic. So this is the reason we're discussing this today. It is said of all the various statistics that are there, 95% of the customer transactions looks like by 2025 will be done by AI bots, either online or through telephone. So I hope that gets you interested, because a lot of major brands have already jumped on this bandwagon, and you see a lot of these major brands already having chatbots. And this is not for any specific domain. I mean, you take retail, healthcare, small enterprises, large ones, on the cloud, on the premises. Everyone's got a chatbot strategy, and very innovative ones as well. If you can guess, what is Rose Intelligence? Is a chatbot which helps lawyers. So it's an AI lawyer chatbot. What it does is it does research of all these. You can imagine the amount of data that a lawyer needs to go through to present to a client. And the lawyer can continue to focus on that presentation while Rose gets all the data for the lawyer. Tara will be very interesting for engineers, because this is an AI recruiter bot. the talent acquisition agency, so acquisition and recruiting automation bot. So what it does is, it will not simply match your profiles with a requirement online. It might even go and check your GitHub activity and try to understand how good a fit a developer is for a specific role. Now, WoBot is very impactful because it is one of those bots that was created using CBT, which is cognitive behavioral therapy. It's used for treating clinical depression. So people who are going through that condition can chat with WoBot to get solace. So debunking a few chatbot myths as we wrap up the first section of the session today. Chatbots are a new technology. Now you know that's a myth, because the technology is relevant, it's developing, but it's not new. Chatbots can only support customer service is also not right, because you saw the various applications, innovative use cases for chatbot. All bots use AI, not necessarily. There are some bots that are very rule-based, very tightly scripted, and you might have come across some of these bots. You ask it any other question other than the 3 questions that it has been configured to, it probably does not know the answer to that. AI chatbots will be able to have that kind of a flexibility. Chatbots versus humans. I always hear this controversial topic. Chatbots are going to come in and going to take all our jobs and it's going to replace humans. Probably not. Think about having chatbots and humans on the same team. So if you deploy a chatbot that takes up maybe the first 30% or 40% of your work, the boring work, the mundane work that you do not want to do, it really frees up your time to do far more creative jobs, maybe the ones that you've been actually hired to do. So it's chatbots and humans. Chatbots are difficult to build. Now I leave you with that thought, and we'll come back and we'll see how difficult or easy that is to build, because the rest of the session is actually on that. So here we're going to look a little bit into the technology. So Microsoft especially has been doing a great job with this, because very prophetically about a few years back at one of the Build conferences, Satya said, human language is the new UI layer and bots are like the new applications. I could not have put it any better than that, because since then, Microsoft has been investing a lot in their AI services, which is typically around Azure. Right? So inside Azure, you will see they have offerings around Azure infrastructure. So they have AI on data, AI on compute. And they also have Azure AI services. So these can be pre-built services that we can just consume, or you can even create custom services. I'll just pause here for a moment to just connect the dots from the first 1 or 2 slides that we saw. Some of the reasons why we have the proliferation of AI right now, as we discuss the breakthroughs of AI, was because of data, compute, and advanced statistical models or advanced algorithms. And you can see how it very nicely maps into the AI platform here, because Azure provides AI on data, AI on compute, and AI services. And most of all, for the developer community, we have the toolkit that is available from Microsoft to be able to use all these services and infrastructure and create powerful applications. So for the sake of this session, we will be focusing on cognitive services and bot service. Not much onto cognitive services. I will just give you a very high level overview on what it is, but mainly on Azure Bot Service. So let's see. This is the very high level, what you call the bot development lifecycle. If those of us coming from a programming paradigm would be familiar with the SDLC, the software development lifecycle. I call this the BDLC, the bot development lifecycle. It's not very different. You go about planning your bot, designing your bot, then you actually build your bot. Once you're happy with it, what you do is you test the bot. And if you have a QA team, the team tests the bot. And if you're really happy with the outcomes, you go ahead and you publish the bot, and then you connect it to the various channels. Right? So I will explain what channels are as well. Finally, you send it out into the world. You put your bot either on the website or integrated to some channel. And that is when the actual work begins. Because once your bot is out there into the world and the customers start interacting with your bot, you get time to evaluate the bot. You get to see whether your bot is answering the questions. If it is not answering the questions, what else needs to be done on the bot? How else does it need to be trained and retrained? And you come back into the build phase. So that cycle there, that loop there is quite important in the VDLC. We'll see how we put this into action using the Azure Bot Service. So Azure Bot Service is one platform which is built, custom built, a purpose built precisely for bot development from Microsoft, right? It provides you all the tools and all the techniques that are required for you to meet each and every phase in that bot development lifecycle. And we'll see how. So I'm going to switch to the demo, which will be on Azure. So let's see. So if you have an Azure subscription today, you can use that Azure subscription, or you can even create a free Azure subscription actually. So what we need to do is go into your portal, into your Azure portal, and you need to create a resource. So what I would do is I would just search for bot, and in searching for bot, you might get a couple of resources, but you would just need to select this Azure bot. This is the bot that you need to select, and hit create. So you will get to see that you have a couple of parameters here to fill out, and this will be the name of the bot, choose your subscription, your resource group, and your pricing tier, etc., and just hit review and create. Right. So that might take a few seconds. So I have a bot that I have created meanwhile, and let me run you through that. So once you create that bot, this is what you will get to see. So you will see in the overview pane a couple of details, but without doing anything, let me just take you directly to this pane that is called channels. So if you remember in the PowerPoint slide, we did talk briefly about the channels concept. So I wanted to show you what channels is. The most beautiful part about the Azure Bot Service, at least the one that I like the most, is the fact that you can really create the Azure bot. You can create a bot using Azure Bot Service, and you can run the same bot with literally no change in source code on multiple channels. So one of the advantages of using the Azure Bot Service is to be able to run single code solutions on multiple channels, which means that if I write a bot today, if I develop a bot today, I will be able to run the same bot on Alexa, on Facebook, Kik, Skype, Telegram. So you see a couple of channels available out of the box: Slack, Telephony, Twilio, Teams, if you have noted Teams here as well, and Cortana. And the way you do this is very, very simple. For example, if I have to configure it for Teams, it's just a matter of entering one or two parameters if need be, and just selecting. For example, for Teams, I didn't have to enter anything. I just needed to agree to a set of parameters and just hit save. And if I have code behind this bot, so that will be running in Teams. Now that said, I really have not coded for my bot here yet. If you go into the configuration pane, you will see that it is expecting a messaging endpoint. So basically, the Azure Bot Service is just going to host a messaging endpoint for you. So how do you create a bot? So you go back into one of our favorite IDEs of all time, Visual Studio. You can do this in Visual Studio Code as well. And you can use Node.js or any language of your choice. I prefer to use C#. So here's what I would do. I would go into File, New Project, and from my templates, I would just hit Bot. If you see, I have a couple of what I would call bot templates here. Now, where did I get this from? Is when I go on Google and just do a quick search on Microsoft Bot Framework templates, you get to download a set of templates. It doesn't come out of the box in Visual Studio, but this is available for you to download and install. So once you run that Visual Studio extension, this will be available for you. So let me show you how one of this works. You just select one of these bots, bot framework templates, and this is one that I just created. Trust me, I have not touched the code here. So let me just run this for you without having written or changed a single piece of code there. Let me show you what it says. It says, so I have named my bot Azure Data Bot. That was the name of my solution. And it says, your bot is ready. But how do you test a bot? Right? Your first Hello World program would be just showing that text hello world on screen. But your bot, you need to interact with your bot, right? So how do you do that is by using what's called a bot framework emulator. Where do I get the bot framework emulator? Same thing. Just go browse for bot framework emulator and you will download the emulator and tell the emulator that your bot is running at this particular location. So what I have done, meanwhile, because I wanted to save time, this is my bot framework emulator and I have connected it to my messaging endpoint. So I'll just show you how this thing works. I am just typing hi and it's returning hi. It says hello. It says hey there. So basically what my bot was as an eco bot. I don't know if you noted when we selected from Visual Studio, the template that we selected was an eco bot template. I know, not super useful, but this is what it does. It just echoes back whatever your user tells the bot. So let me come back here and let me show you for a second where that piece of code is. So this is a very straightforward ASP.NET Core web application, and you can go in here and you can see that it's absolutely the same format, and you can change whatever you would like inside this. So this is where it returns the message for whatever the user is typing, and you can have a welcome message. So the idea here is based on your business case, on your problem statement, you can write your entire business logic into this. You want to call APIs, you want to connect to a database, however you deem fit. When you're ready, publish it to an Azure Web Service. And from there, you get the endpoint, you configure it back into your data bot here. So that's the entire flow. So if I can come back to my PowerPoint here for a second, and I'll show you now, we've actually come full circle on this. But as we just saw with our eco bot, my bot isn't super helpful in this regard. And in most of the bots, there will be some certain known patterns, so to speak. For example, every bot will need to understand what the user is asking for, understanding the intent of the user. What is the intention of the user? For example, I can tell the bot, hey, someone else will say hello. A third person can say hi. So irrespective of however that is being said, my bot should be intelligent enough to know that it is a greeting and it should be able to respond in a manner. So we have services of that sort. When I say services, it's just API calls. So we have intelligent services of that sort. One service that we have is language understanding service. So LUIS as it's called. So this is also from Microsoft. Another service where we can store all the results, where we can store all the questions and answers, and we know what to respond back to the bot. It doesn't have to be an Azure SQL DB. It doesn't have to be a document DB. You can keep it in a Q&A maker, which is almost like a no-code solution to this, right? So similarly, you have a lot of options to choose from. If you need to say provide voice support, it is possible very easily. You have AI services for speech. If you need to provide a translation, you have AI services for multilingual capabilities. If you want to analyze the sentiment of the text, it is possible by just simply calling the text analytics API, right? So there are so many use cases for these. And we just scratching the surface here in terms of what is possible with bot service. And I just showed you the eco bot, but please be known that, very powerful bots can be built, and we really have a bot framework, in fact, in place from Microsoft, using which customers have built very powerful bots. And if you are a soccer fan, I would encourage you to please check out the La Liga app, which is on, it is a virtual assistant, which is available on your smartphone. It's there on Google as well. So you're on your Google Assistant as well. It is built using the Azure Bot Service and using the virtual assistant bot framework. So La Liga, in collaboration with Microsoft, actually built this. So here we come full circle in BDLC. If you actually see, Azure Bot Service provides you the support for each and every one of this. You can plan, you can build using cognitive services, or inside Visual Studio, you can build, you can test using a bot framework emulator. You can publish it back into your Azure Bot Service. connect it to the various channels that you saw, evaluate it. We have not seen the evaluate stage, but I can tell you what it is, that you can connect an app insights resource and you can get insights out of it, telemetry out of it, and see how your bot is actually responding in the real world. And then based on that results, you again go back to your drawing boards. You may build, test, publish, connect, and so on and so forth. So as we come to the end and I give you maybe a little time for Q&A, I just wanted to wrap it up with one final thought as I leave you on responsible AI. So it's a very powerful technology and a set of tools that we have at our disposal, but it's also important for us to remind ourselves as AI engineers and developers to be able to build apps that are fair, reliable, secure, safe, inclusive, and accountable. Because every line of code that we are writing today, we are actually building the future, not just for ourselves, for our families, for our communities, and the people who are relying on the software, on the bots that we are building. So I hope that gives you a good understanding of what conversational AI is, why we're talking about this. I hope got you excited about it, and how you can get started with conversational AI, today. So it just took me 5 minutes to build a bot end to end. But I do understand that a business bot can be much, much more than that. But do try it out, and feel free to connect with me on my LinkedIn or my Twitter channels, and I'm happy to stay connected and take your questions as well.